So just when we thought the offseason had kind of cooled off for a few days, it's gotten even crazier. I know we had the Crochet trade happen a couple days ago, but now we have some major trades going on. One being the Chicago Cubs trading for Kyle Tucker. Yes, Kyle Tucker, one of the best outfielders in Major League Baseball, has just been traded to the Chicago Cubs, and it's a huge trade with big-name prospects and even some former All-Stars. And then the Yankees went and traded Nestor Cortes, used to be a fan favorite until the playoffs. They traded him to the Brewers for Devin Williams. So there are some massive moves going on. We're going to go ahead and talk about everything from both sides on both of these trades and let you know what I'm thinking. As always, if you guys are enjoying the video, make sure to drop a like on it, as well as subscribe to the channel. We have the 12 days of MLB rankings starting tomorrow. You don't want to miss out on those, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on that stuff. Get in the comment section down below. Let me know, who do you think won these trades? Do you think it was a good trade for the Cubs? Do you think it was a good trade for the Yankees? I'd love to know what you're saying. And follow me out on my social media, GiraffeNeckMarc. Links are in the description. All right, so let's talk about this Kyle Tucker trade, because that's the biggest one. That's what everybody wants to talk about. Jeff Passan, of course, the news comes out. Kyle Tucker, who is on an expiring contract, traded from the Houston Astros, which again seems insane. It doesn't feel like that's a real sentence, but Kyle Tucker traded from the Astros to the Chicago Cubs in exchange for 3 players: Isaac Paredes, Hayden Wesneski, and Cam Smith, who is their first-round pick last year, who is a top prospect in the game right now. This is a great trade from both sides. I know that sounds crazy, but you got to hear me out. I think both sides are benefiting massively from this trade. Both teams are, I'm not going to say getting better, but both teams are getting some good stuff here, because definitely the Astros are getting worse, and this is now a weird conversation that we have to have not only about the Astros, but the American League as a whole is incredibly weak. There are not major players right now like you see in the National League. The National League has a lot more talent right now than the American League, and especially the American League West. The fact that the Astros just traded Kyle Tucker, who is a perennial all-star, who was an MVP candidate last year up until he got hurt. He was having a phenomenal year, and we'll go over those numbers in a second. They did just trade him, and that does make their team currently worse. That being said, the guys that got back, I actually think are, 1, really good fits for the Houston Astros, and 2, will make a lot more sense when I explain it, because Isaac Paredes with the Cubs, bad fit. Isaac Paredes with the Astros, maybe the best fit that could physically happen. But first, let's talk about Kyle Tucker. So Kyle Tucker, I know some of you maybe aren't as hip to how just good Kyle Tucker is. I know a lot of you are, but a lot of people don't seem to understand that Kyle Tucker is one of the 10, 15 maybe best players in all of Major League Baseball. He is criminally underrated. He's kind of, I don't want to say outshined by Yordan Alvarez and Jose Altuve and even Alex Bregman and Correa at times when he was in Houston, but because he's not the flashiest of players, because he kind of just puts up good numbers, does it quietly, not a big star by any means with his personality, I think he goes under the radar on a Houston Astros team that has been wildly successful for basically 7, 8, 9 years now. So if you look at Kyle Tucker's numbers last year, in only 277 at-bats, how many games is that? 78 games. He put up 4.7 WAR, which is disgusting, absolutely disgusting, and he was on trajectory for a career season. He had 23 homers, a 289 average, 408 on base, 585 slugging, and a 993 OPS. For an OPS plus at 181, that's absolutely disgusting. Like, he was playing out of his mind, and if you look at what he's done the last few years, you could see this coming. Next year will be his 28-year-old season. This past was his 27, and it's not like he hasn't performed in the past. He's basically put up 3 straight years of 30-plus home runs a year, or just 30 home runs on the dot. 30 in 2021, 30 in 2022, 29 in 2023. That's very close. 100 RBIs every year, 30 doubles. He stole 30 bases back in 2023. He stole 11 in 78 games. He is a complete player. Now, defensively, he's not that great out in right field. He is not by any means a great defensive outfielder, but he does have a good arm. He's a good athlete, so he can make up for some of his shortcomings in terms of that because of his athleticism, and you don't care when you're looking at a guy who puts up OPSs right around 900 every single year. He is one of the best hitters in Major League Baseball, and I say this as probably the most underrated player maybe in baseball. I think there's a really good argument there for Kyle Tucker, and it's like, even looking at the baseball savant numbers, he's just red everywhere. He doesn't chase, he walks a ton, he doesn't strike out. He was walking more than he struck out last year. 16% walk rate to a 15.9% K rate is disgusting. He doesn't swing and miss, he squares up the baseball, he barrels it, he does everything, and he hits to all fields too, which I think is big in Chicago, because we know he is no longer going to have the Crawford boxes, and it doesn't play as much of a factor for Kyle Tucker in left field as it's going to help in right, because of course, Minute Maid, I don't know what it's called now, but it's still a bandbox in terms of everywhere in that field, but left field in particularly, and as a lefty, it's not as big of a deal for Kyle Tucker, but we'll talk about the Crawford boxes a little bit more later. And while it's less home runs in Chicago, 19 home runs, still really good for a team that desperately needed some star power, because the Cubs have a lot of, truthfully, good players. Like Ian Happ is a good player. Seiya Suzuki is a good player. Cody Bellinger is a good player. He might be on his way out, though, it seems like, so we'll wait and see. Pico Armstrong, elite defense in center field. You have at shortstop Dansby Swanson, who's elite defense there. You have Michael Busch, who's good. You have some pretty good pitchers. Like, this is a solid Cubs team, and Kyle Tucker does make them a lot better. It makes them at least a more legit contender in the National League Central. You're going to slot Kyle Tucker right into that number 2 spot in that lineup. He's going to be hitting every single day, playing right field. The one thing I guess you have a concern as a Cubs fan is, did we give up too much for a guy like Kyle Tucker, who, as a player, no, but because he's a free agent this upcoming offseason, is there a chance you re-sign him before the year? I don't think so. He's been pretty adamant the fact that he wants to hit free agency. He just saw Juan Soto get paid. He's going to get $400 million plus on the free agent market. And 2, does he even want to sign with the Cubs? Can the Cubs afford to pay him that money? Because I think if the Cubs are not seriously consider re-signing this guy on an extension, or at least in the offseason, giving him a ton of money, this trade makes a lot less sense. But if the Cubs are going to be very aggressive, I mean, we know the Cubs owners have the money to spend. This would be the guy to do it on. Kyle Tucker's a stud. Now, from the Astros perspective, losing Kyle Tucker stinks. Their outfield depth is super bizarre. I don't really even know who's going to be playing every single day out there. I don't love it, but they made the choice. They wanted to trade one of the two between Kyle Tucker and Framber Valdez, so I assume Framber's going to get extended while Kyle Tucker is on his way out. They grabbed Isaac Paredes from the Cubs. He's going to be someone who slots in at third base. I think this ends Alex Bregman's time in Houston, which kind of is insane to say out loud, but Isaac Paredes is going to be the reason why Bregman does not become an Astro again, it seems like. And while his numbers with the Cubs were putrid, I mean, 52 games, 3 homers, 6 doubles, 633 OPS, it is because his game does not translate to Wrigley Field at all. And I actually have to redo my third base rankings because I ranked him as a Cub and I put him down more. Now that he's a Houston Astro, he goes where he belongs, way up the list. Because in Chicago, for a guy who's a dead pull hitter who doesn't necessarily hit bombs by any means, you truthfully couldn't have found a worse park, because of course in Wrigley, left field and right field are deep down the lines and it gets short in the gaps, but that's not where Isaac Paredes' power zone is. Look at the spray chart. It is literally almost all down the line, and that's what Tampa Bay saw. That's why they went after him originally when he was at Detroit, and that's why they're able to get the most out of him. That being said, now that he goes to the Houston Astros, all these things are going to ring even more true, because with the Astros, he would have had 26 home runs last year. With the Astros, he's got the Crawford boxes in left field. He is going to be an absolute monster in Houston as long as all the other stuff stays legit. Like, he never particularly barrels the ball up at a great rate. He doesn't always make the greatest swing decisions, and his bat speed isn't great, and his exit fields aren't great, but he has an ability to pull the ball directly down the line. And for the Houston Astros and those Crawford boxes, that is a match made in heaven. So Isaac Paredes, he couldn't have had a better fit for any team in Major League Baseball than the Houston Astros. That's where he ends up. Hayden Wesneski is an interesting one because he's a guy who's been in between a reliever and a starter through the last few years. He has like a really good sweeper, but the rest of his stuff is kind of mid, honestly. And I know the Astros are desperate for more pitching. They want more arms. They want more guys that can give them some innings, and I think Wesneski will be that guy. He went to Sam Houston State, so he's from relatively the area, or at least went to college in the area. No, he is from Houston, and he's only 27 as well. They have control over him for 2032. Wow, okay. So that's what their play is. They probably see a little something in Hayden Wesneski where they can make a change here or there, make a tweak, and maybe get a little bit more out of him. Because again, that sweeper is good. The fastball gets up to like 95 miles an hour, which is pretty solid if you have that good sweeper. He is just lacking a third pitch, and that's one of the reasons why he's still more of a reliever at this moment rather than a starting pitcher. But again, this isn't the big piece. This was kind of a throw-in. The big piece, besides Isaac Paredes, is going to be Cam Smith, the Cubs' first-round pick from this past year, who just went off in the minor leagues. So Cam Smith was a 14th overall pick back in the 2024 draft out of Florida State. He plays third base, and the dude absolutely mashed. 6'3", 224, big, strong kid, and you look at these numbers at the minors. In 32 games, 7 homers, 5 doubles, 4 triples, 24 RBIs, a 313 average, 396 on base, 609 slugging, and an OPS above 1,000. He got up to Double-A. Granted, only 5 games, but he got up to Double-A in his first professional season in the minors, that being 32 games. The Cubs were like good enough to get going. He's a really good hitter. The hit tool is legit. They want to see if he can play some other positions, I think, as well. I don't necessarily know if third base is going to be the home for Cam Smith in the future, but this is the guy. This is the piece that the Astros were wanting. Paredes, you have till 2028. Wesneski, you have till 2030, and Cam Smith hasn't even touched the major leagues yet, isn't close, but is a stud prospect. The way I've been describing it to people is that the Cubs gave up nothing for them, because I don't necessarily think Cam Smith had to be a part of the Cubs' future. I think if Cam Smith gets you an all-star MVP caliber player, you were willing to make that trade all the time. Isaac Paredes was never going to work in Chicago. His game didn't fit there, and Wesneski, whatever. Who cares about Hayden Wesneski if you're the Cubs? You just got Kyle Tucker. From the Astros' perspective, you got a decent haul back, and you got players that fit your system, that fit your ballpark. You've got the power bat and Isaac Paredes who can pull the ball down the line. You've got a top prospect for a Astros farm system that is super super, super weak. You get a top guy in there. I think he's like number 73 in the MLB pipeline rankings. And Wesneski's going to give you innings, which you want. So again, it's weird because the Astros just traded a stud for something that's not necessarily going to make them that much better or better at all. But I think this is going to be a trade that ends out working for both of them. And it really does depend on what happens post-2025 season. Because if Kyle Tucker walks and goes somewhere else, kind of like Juan Soto just did, I mean, what are you doing, Cubs? You got to bring this guy back on a long-term deal. He's the star you've been waiting for. Pay this man. And then to talk about the Yankees trade that happened earlier in the day, the Yankees traded Caleb Durbin and Nestor Cortes to the Milwaukee Brewers in exchange for Devin Williams. And truthfully, I understand it. I know what the Brewers are doing. They simply said, we're trading a reliever at what we feel like is peak value for him right now. We're going to trade him for a starter who's going to give us 160 innings this year at an ERA right around 4, and that's Nestor Cortes. And then Caleb Durbin is a very toolsy 5'6" utility player who the Brewers love those kinds of guys. They will play him at third base. They'll play him at second. They'll play him at short. I'm sure they'll play him out in the outfield at some point. Like, he's just going to be a utility man, a little bit of a Swiss Army knife for them. And he's free, and he's got control forever. From the Yankees side, you get one of the best relievers in all of Major League Baseball. Granted, he is a rental, but you gave up Nestor Cortes, who does not matter to the 2025 Yankees. You weren't going to use him in the rotation. He was going to be a bullpen arm at most. This was honestly the best case scenario for the Yankees, was trading Nestor and trading Caleb Durbin, because, I mean, who cares about Caleb Durbin if you're the Yankees, for a stud back-end reliever for your new closer. I know Luke Weaver did really well, but Devin Williams is just straight up better. I mean, look at these numbers the last couple years. Granted, he's been a little bit of a hothead, has a little bit of a temper issue, and has at times made some bad decisions off the field. But on the field, he has a 1.83 ERA for his career in 235 innings. That's 241 appearances, by the way. He has a whip right around 1 at 1.023. The last couple seasons it's been below 1. He won Rookie of the Year back in 2020. He's an all-star. He strikes out like 30-40% of the batters he faced. He struck out 43% last year, 37% the year before, 40-30. I mean, like, the numbers are insane. His rookie year, he struck out 53% of the batters. That's crazy. He does tend to walk some guys. He's one of the most unique pitches in baseball with that changeup that's more like a screwball. He's disgusting. He's a dog, and you got him on a expiring contract for a dude who's also on an expiring contract in Nestor Cortes, who you didn't need. I think this was a great trade for the Yankees. I really love what they've been doing the last couple days, including not signing Juan Soto and letting him go to the Mets. Thank you. Now, as for the Brewers with Nestor Cortes, I mean, again, he is a 4 ERA guy. I think going from Yankee Stadium to Milwaukee will probably do him some benefits. The Brewers are really good at pitching development, and I think they'll be able to get a little bit more out of Nestor. That being said, I've never been a huge fan of his. Like, I think he's quirky. I think he's funky. I think he's a little bit gimmicky. I think the stuff is super mid. I'm not a huge fan of the stuff on the mound. But he's going to give you 170 innings. That's what the Brewers are looking for. He is going to not lose you games, but also not win you games. He is just a person that is going to pitch Milwaukee and become a free agent at the end of the year. And then, yeah, with Caleb Durbin, I mean, you're just looking at a guy who's an on-base machine, has a low pop in the bat, can play a bunch of different positions, walks more than he strikes out, doesn't strike out at all. I mean, he's just a toolsy little dude who can play a bunch of different positions, which the Brewers love. So I think it's a great trade for the Yankees. I don't necessarily think it's a great trade for the Brewers. I thought they were going to be able to get maybe something different, but I can rationalize it that they traded reliever innings for a starter's innings, and starter innings are way more expensive. I'd love to know what you guys think about these trades down in the comment section below. Who do you think won? Was it the Cubs? Was it the Yankees? Let me know what you're thinking down in the comments. Drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it, as well as subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of the content coming at you. 12 days of MLB rankings start tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. Follow me on all my social media, GiraffeNeckMarc. Links are in the description, and that's where I'll wrap it up, guys. You know the drill from here on out. YouTube recommends you watch this video. This is my most recent upload, so click through those if you have not yet seen them. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you all tomorrow, unless there's some more big news, for the 12 days of MLB rankings. Peace out.